Part 31. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 301. Hearing these words, Qin Xian raised his eyebrows, looked at Mo Chen with admiration, and said, "Yes, since you promised to protect his descendants, I advise you that it is best to find his descendants now and take them to the sect, so that you can take care of them more easily. After all, if something happens to them while you're away, you won't be able to arrive in time." Hearing this, Mo Chen nodded. He thought so too, mainly because he was afraid that Qin Xian would not agree. Now that Qin Xian had agreed, there was no need to worry. At the same time, Fire Cloud State, in Huanglong Valley. A man wearing a black robe and a cold face stood among a group of corpses, like a god of murder. And in his hand, there was a long knife stained with blood. On the long knife, blood was dripping, like water drops, constantly sliding down. Beside the man, there were two Daoist figures huddled together, looking as if they were unconscious. The man in black robe is just bloodthirsty. Ever since Qin Xian asked them to recruit disciples from the outside world, Bloodthirsty has been diligently searching in the nearby states. Unfortunately, in the end, he couldn't find anything that satisfied him. This situation made Bloodthirsty a little disappointed, but he still didn't give up on the mission of finding his disciples. Until one day ago, he came to Huayun State and rescued two people from a group of people. Bloodthirsty saw that the two had good qualifications and both had physical constitutions, which was more in line with Profound Heaven Sect's current recruitment of disciples, so he directly saved them. But unfortunately, he was also attacked by some people. However, the strength of Bloodthirsty is naturally not a vegetarian. After fighting layer by layer, Bloodthirsty finally killed all these people with 1 against 100. The corpses nearby are those of the group just now. The whole scene can be said to be horrific, with black crows wandering high in the sky one after another. There were also strange screams coming from his mouth, as if he was waiting for Bloodthirsty to fall down. Too bad they were to be disappointed. Bloodthirsty dropped the long knife and finally couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed to the ground, but he still stood up with strength. At this moment, all his mana has been exhausted. It can be said that the oil has run out. If he meets another person whose strength reaches the celestial immortal realm, there will really be no solution for his Bloodthirsty. Looking at the corpses nearby, Bloodthirsty breathed heavily. He wandered over to the two people who were unconscious on the ground. After looking at the two of them, 2 pills appeared in the Bloodthirsty hands, and then they put them into their mouths. After half a stick of incense, the two bodies moved slightly. He touched his hazy eyes and looked around until he saw Bloodthirsty, who was recovering his mana and injuries. There was a hint of fear in their eyes, but there was also a hint of joy. What I'm afraid of is that this person kills people like crazy, shows no mercy, and almost gets blood. They all saw the scene of 1 against 100 just now. It was a pity that the two of them had no cultivation and were frightened by such a cruel scene and passed out. As for the joy, this man saved them and had no intention of killing them. Phew. As if knowing that the two of them had woken up, they opened their eyes with Bloodthirsty. Looking at his body, he found that about 60% of his injuries had recovered, and he had the power to protect himself. Then he raised his eyes to look at the two of them and said with an indifferent expression, "Now that you're awake, come with me. If you stay here, there's no chance anyone will come." Hearing this, the two men nodded quickly, helped each other stand up, and followed the Bloodthirsty S. We walked for nearly half an hour. The three of them came to a cave. The cave was covered with dense moss, and in the center, there was a small pool. Smelling this natural breath, Bloodthirsty's originally vigilant expression suddenly relaxed. He used his magic power to clean up all the dirty things on the side and sat down. Then he half closed his eyes, looked up at the two of them, waved to them, and said, "Come here and rest for a while." Your mortal physique cannot stand to move around for a long time. Hearing this, the two of them nodded tremblingly. He carefully sat down next to Shuexia, looked at Shuexia again, and found that he had closed his eyes at this time, and seemed to be sleeping. But in fact, Bloodthirsty is not sleeping, but restoring mental strength. The long battle made him very tired, and he would not have the energy if he did not rest. And there is no elixir for him to restore his energy. The scene suddenly fell into silence, and neither of them exchanged any words. Until their stomachs growled. Seeing this, the two of them touched their bellies in embarrassment. There is no way, they haven't eaten for a long time, they are mortals, not immortals like Bloodthirsty who don't need to eat. Seeing this scene, Bloodthirsty opened his eyes and looked at them. 2 pills appeared in his hand again and said, "This is the fasting pill. If you swallow it, it will temporarily protect you from hunger." Hearing this, the two of them nodded. They did not doubt that the elixir was harmful to them and swallowed it without hesitation. In an instant, the two of them felt that their bodies had strength, and they no longer felt hungry. Then he smiled brightly at Bloodlust. Bloodthirsty turned a blind eye to this and still leaned against the wall indifferently. His deep eyes shone with light, as if he was thinking. And night has quietly arrived, and the entire Huanglong Valley is covered with a mysterious veil. But behind this mysterious veil, there are powerful celestial immortal realm warriors one after another. I saw the Yellow Dragon Valley filled with murderous intent, and 8 powerful men from the celestial immortal realm suddenly appeared nearby. They all wore masks with ghost faces, their eyes were cold, and the long knives in their hands were emitting a cold air. It seems to reflect that this knife has tasted the blood of many people. As for Bloodthirsty, who was in the cave, he suddenly opened his eyes when he heard the sound coming from outside, and his expression instantly became alert. After looking at the 2 sleeping people, he walked out without making any sound. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot and appeared on a mountain peak. And below him were the 8 black shadows just now. The black shadow in front of him was like lightning, constantly shuttling through the valley. The strong murderous intent drove away all the nearby monster birds. The 8 strong men of the celestial immortal realm are in a bit of trouble. Seeing this scene, Bloodthirsty frowned slightly. His current strength is only celestial immortal realm perfection. 7 of these 8 have reached the late stage, and the remaining 1 has reached the peak. And it seems that they are acting together, so there is no guarantee that there is any formation. This was the only thing Bloodthirsty was worried about, otherwise he would have rushed forward and started fighting with the 8 people. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 302. In the Valley. The eyes of the 8 people kept looking around, scanning one secret place after another, but they still couldn't find what they wanted. The strong man whose strength reached the peak of celestial immortal realm seemed to be the boss of this group of people. He looked around, glanced at the person next to him, and ordered. "Since you can't find them, just use the search coil to look for them, so you don't waste time." Hearing this, the man nodded, and immediately took out something that looked like a disc, and then transferred mana into it. The next moment, the probe plate made a buzzing sound, and a red line flickered. Appeared in front of everyone, and the place pointed by the red line was the cave where Bloodthirsty had just stayed. When the leader saw this, his exposed eyes lit up slightly, and then he rushed in the direction of the red line. Seeing this scene, Bloodthirsty, who was on top of the mountain, frowned. After thinking for a moment, he decided to follow them to see if he had a chance to quickly deal with a few of them. As for why didn't everyone take out the exploration cards earlier? This is because the exploration pen is very precious and is a one-time use. Originally, the 8 people thought that they would take it out when they really couldn't find the other 2. The 8 people came to the entrance of the cave. The leader in black looked at the cave, with a sinister smile on his face hidden under the mask, and then stepped inside. What came into view were two men and a woman lying next to the wall. Seeing this scene, the man in black laughed, as expected, "It's here, it's really easy for me to find." Then he was about to lift the two of them up, but at this moment, the hidden bloodthirsty finally couldn't help it and started to take action. Using the fastest speed, he instantly killed one of the 7 people outside, snatched the knife from his hand, and then started fighting with the other 6 people. Rumble. Bloodthirsty slashed a 100-meter-long slash with his sword. The 6 of them did not react. They kept retreating and barely caught the move. But it didn't kill them, but being able to kill one person instantly was pretty good. Immediately, Bloodthirsty gathered his magic power and poured it into the long knife in his hand. The next moment, a strong evil aura came out of the long knife. This evil aura made the 6 people's expressions suddenly startled, and their figures began to retreat again. It seems that he is afraid of something. But Bloodthirsty didn't care about them. The blade shook, and hundreds of crossed double blades rushed towards the man in black at the entrance of the cave. After all, as long as this person is dealt with, it will be much easier to fight those people outside. Seeing this scene, the man in black's eyes narrowed, and then he let out a disdainful laugh. He concentrated his magic power with one hand and turned it into a shield. He caught the move with an indifferent expression, as if he never thought that these moves would work. Pose a threat to yourself. Then, the man in black appeared in front of Bloodthirsty as quickly as possible and punched out fiercely. Boom! The next moment, hundreds of blades hit the side. As soon as he finished speaking, a black fireball formed in the hands of the man in black and he threw it away without hesitation. They were all blocked in an instant, but the phoenix did not disappear. Instead, it rushed in the direction of the 6 people, as if it wanted to devour them. The aura on her body shook, and in an instant, a phantom of a phoenix appeared behind her. The phoenix screamed and rushed towards the incoming move with endless flames. He wanted to run away, but Yun Fengji had already noticed him, and as soon as Mingfeng approached him, he cut him in half. A pair of smart eyes are full of coldness, and one look at them will make people fall straight into the ice cave. As soon as he finished speaking, Yun Fengji's figure appeared behind the man in black like a ghost. He held a long sword tightly with his long and slender fingers and stabbed it out without hesitation. Prepare for your death. Unfortunately, this blow was blocked by the knife in the hand of the man in black. When the other 6 people saw this scene, they also reacted, and one after another magic power emerged from the knife in their hands. Having said this, Yun Fengji looked disappointed at him. Hearing this, Bloodthirsty didn't say much. If his strength hadn't been fully restored, otherwise these people would not be his opponents at all. Seeing this, Yun Fengji didn't look panicked. From the beginning to the end, she never took these people seriously. And she is Yun Fengji. Let me see how strong you are and whether it's worth my full strength. Then a pill appeared in Yun Fengji's hand, threw it in front of the bloodthirsty man and said calmly, "Eat it, so that your injuries can be recovered as soon as possible." The body was burned into ashes, scattered in the air, and finally blown away by the wind, turning into fertilizer one after another, nourishing the earth. Boom! 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 You dare to attack me with such little strength, huh? You should be the one who rescued these 2 little guys. It's a pity that although your talent is high, you don't have the life to enjoy it. But you are too useless. You are just a strong man from the celestial immortal realm. How can you still lose to him? Bloodthirsty spit out a mouthful of blood and hit it heavily on a mountain peak. Regarding Yun Fengji, he showed deep-seated fear. A pair of white and slender jade legs is particularly fascinating. Seeing this, the man in black frowned slightly. He felt a sense of threat in this woman. Yun Fengji also rushed over after hearing the noise here. She happened to see the scene just now. As a close friend, she blocked the fatal move. What's more, the strong man at the peak of celestial immortal realm is not ordinary. Even if he is at the peak, it will take some time to deal with him. When the man in black on the other side saw this scene, he lost his original calmness, his face showed a trace of panic, and cold sweat had eroded the back of his clothes. There was a bang, but the fireball did not hit Bloodthirsty, but was blocked by a daoist figure, and this person was a woman. Yun Fengji followed Bloodthirsty from the beginning, but when something happened, the two separated. The woman was dressed in green clothes, with long flowing hair and a cold face, but she could not hide her cold and beautiful face. Clang. Seeing this, the man in black sneered and sneered. Seeing this scene, the eyes of the six people showed a trace of panic. Before they could escape, the phoenix spit out a burst of blazing fire. The fire instantly burned the bodies of the six people, and they suddenly let out a tragic cry. In just a snap of their fingers, the six people were stunned. The human soul is burned out. How is this woman so strong? Since she is a strong person in the true immortal realm. Afterwards, Yun Fengji looked at a few people with cold eyes and said indifferently. Ah, cough. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 303. The two people staying in the cave had also woken up and happened to see the scene just now. The facial expressions of the two were a little scared, and a look of panic flashed in their bright eyes. But Yun Fengji only glanced at the two of them and then looked away. At this time, Shui had already recovered from his injuries and walked over. The first time the two of them saw Bloodthirsty, they ran quickly behind him like a child who had been scolded, but then stuck out their little heads and glanced at Yun Fengji quietly. But Yun Fengji didn't say anything, turning a blind eye to it, and her facial expression remained cold. Seeing this scene, Bloodthirsty touched the heads of the two of them, and a smile appeared on his cold face. This was his rare tenderness. Even Yun Fengji was a little surprised when he saw this, and was a little curious in his heart as to why he showed such an appearance to the two of them. Don't be afraid, this person is my friend. Did that guy hurt you just now? Hearing this, the two shook their heads, and the man said timidly, he didn't hurt us. Hearing this, Bloodthirsty nodded and touched his head, let's go. For safety's sake, let's leave here first. The man nodded, took the gentle and lovely girl beside him, and followed Yun Fengji and Bloodthirsty but out of here. 3 days later, the great Zhou dynasty entered the territory of Immortal Dynasty. High in the sky. Chirp. There was a flash of birdsong. I saw a figure of a lightning eagle constantly spreading its wings, soaring in the sky, and making a cry. And on the lightning eagle, there were still figures of Bloodthirsty and Yun Fengji. The two of them are sitting here cross-legged, closing their eyes, seeming to be practicing. Not far away, there was a boy and a girl sitting there obediently. After a cup of tea, Shui opened his eyes and slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. At this moment, his strength was fully restored. Immediately, Bloodthirsty looked at the two people sitting obediently and asked softly, what are your names? Hearing this, the two of them glanced at Bloodthirsty, and the young man whispered back, my name is Guran, and as for my sister, her name is Guqiu. Guran Guqiu. Bloodthirsty murmured in a low voice, then looked at Guran and asked again, do you want to become my teacher? Ah! Hearing this, Guran was a little dazed, a hint of disbelief flashed in his bright eyes, but then his face showed a hint of determination and he nodded. I think, I also want to be a strong person like you, so that I can protect my family and protect my sister from being bullied. Hearing this, a smile appeared on the bloodthirsty and cold face. Okay, in that case, you will be my bloodthirsty disciple from now on. If you have any hidden thoughts or uncomfortable words, you can tell me, and my master will help you solve your problems. Hearing this, Guran nodded heavily, then knelt down and kowtowed 3 times to Bloodthirsty. Seeing this, Bloodthirsty did not refuse and looked at him with a smile until Guran finished. At this time, Yun Fenji also opened her beautiful eyes and looked at this scene, but her expression was a little hesitant, as if she wanted to ask a question, but didn't know how to ask. After thinking for a while, he walked in front of him, noticed the figure behind him, and looked at the little girl beside him with Bloodthirsty, then turned to look at Yun Fenji behind him and asked, "Have you ever thought about taking on a disciple?" Yun Fenji blinked, glanced at Bloodthirsty in confusion and said, "Why do you say that? You completed this mission very well, so the ancient demon dragon body is handed over to you." Seeing this scene, Guqiu let out a breath, knelt down, and kowtowed 3 times respectfully to Yun Fenji. Yun Fenji breathed out a heavy breath, knelt down, touched her little face, and asked with a smile, "Oh? Really? Why don't I feel that way?" After half a stick of incense, listening to what Bloodthirsty and Yun Fenji had just said, Qin Xian nodded slightly and was very satisfied with what the 2 of them had done. Seeing this, Qin Xian nodded slightly and saw the 2 brothers and sisters Guran who were a little shy. Seeing this, Yun Fenji didn't say anything. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the cute and beautiful little girl beside her, who also happened to be looking at her with a pair of big eyes. Hearing this, Guqiu lowered his head and did not answer immediately, but looked at his brother Guran. But Bloodthirsty didn't reply to her words. Instead, she was going to pass on the technique to Guran. Whether she accepted it or not was entirely up to her. Looking at the crowd, Qin Xian's expression remained unchanged, his eyes looked towards the indifferent expression of Bloodthirsty, and he said. Immediately, Guran nodded to Guqiu, indicating that it was okay. In the main hall, Bloodthirsty and Yun Fenji brought the 2 of them here, and soon they saw Qin Xian sitting on the throne. As soon as the words fell, a black magic bead was instantly injected into the Bloodthirsty body. In an instant, a surging demonic energy appeared in the hall, and everyone's facial expressions began to become solemn at this moment. A powerful dragon roar resounded through the hall, and Qin Xian took this opportunity to release the infant dragon. Bloodthirsty smiled and replied, "Because I think this little girl is very suitable to be your apprentice." In the main hall, Qin Xian was sitting on the throne, with several figures standing below him. Then, without saying much, the few people returned to Profound Heaven section at this time. Profound Heaven sect did not choose to hide anymore, but appeared openly in the eyes of the world. Bloodthirsty nodded to him. Although the qualifications of these disciples are good, they are not as good as those brought back by Shui 11 and Yun Fenji. What do you think? These 2 little guys should be your apprentices, right? Roar. Do you want to take your sister as your teacher? Gong Mo, Fanggu, and others also returned to the sect one after another. These are the people who were sent out by Qin Xian to recruit disciples. Sect Master, the 2 of them said in unison. Everyone brought back 1 or 2 disciples with good qualifications, but they did not recruit any more disciples. Hearing this, the 2 nodded and replied, "Yes, Sect Master." Seeing this, Guran looked at Bloodthirsty. After all, as his sister, he hoped that Guqiu could find a good teacher. Then Shui Xian and Yun Fenji told Qin Xian everything he had experienced in the past few days. The demon dragon is very similar to the azure dragon, except that his body is black and his eyes are blood red. Master. Yun Fenji helped her up. To be honest, she also liked Guqiu. After all, he was so cute. Half a month later. However, Qin Xian also sent people to investigate the assassin. He believed that there would be results if he failed to pass. After all, the 2 of them had already joined his section. He would naturally clean up the people behind him. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 304. And he also exudes arrogance and domineering aura. The first time he saw Bloodthirsty, the demonic dragon rushed forward and stayed by his side like a well-behaved baby. This situation lasted for a quarter of an hour. Bloodthirsty opened his eyes and touched the demon dragon's little head. The demon dragon also touched Bloodthirsty's fingers affectionately with his head. Seeing this, Shuexian showed a gentle smile. At this time, his strength had broken through to the true immortal realm. Then he looked at Qin Xian respectfully, leaned over and cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Master." Upon hearing this, Qin Xian waved his hands indifferently and said calmly, "You deserve this, no need to thank me." When other people saw this scene, they did not show any expressions of envy, jealousy, hatred, etc. After all, Bloodthirsty did the best in this mission. Although Gong Mo and Fanggu wanted it very much, they knew that they did not do a very good job in this mission, and they would not commit robbery. And everyone also knows that Qin Xian has always been clear about rewards and punishments, and will never show favoritism to anyone, even if that person is his disciple. Then Qin Xian thought for a moment, looked up at the crowd and said, "This mission has not been completed, so you don't have to be discouraged. If one of you completes the mission assigned to him by me, I will issue some rewards again later. Of course, there is one thing I want to tell you now, that is, from now on, you do not need to stay in the sect to practice, but cooperate with the Shadow Palace and the Soul Palace to prepare to devour the Flying Immortal Domain and Sealed Immortal Domain within the 10 domains, gather all those forces without paying the price. If you can't gather them, then just kill them by force, so that I, Profound Heaven Sect, can rise quickly. Otherwise we can only become a force that everyone bullies. I believe you all know the situation in the 10 regions." After hearing this, everyone nodded without any rebuttal. "Bloodthirst is here to stay, please step back." After everyone heard this, they backed away. After everyone left, Qin Xian looked at Shuexian who was standing there quietly without saying a word. A jade bead appeared in his hand. In an instant, a powerful force was poured directly into Shuexian's mind. Seeing this in this situation, Bloodthirsty did not refuse, but chose to accept it calmly, because he knew that Lord O Sect would not harm him. Then, his true immortal realm strength began to slowly rise, and in just one breath, he reached the golden immortal realm. This is the bloodthirsty strength given by Qin Xian using the rank 5 mortal immortal jade bead. Feeling the strength of his golden immortal realm, a trace of joy appeared on his bloodthirsty face, and he quickly raised his hands to Qin Xian and said, "Thank you, Master, for giving me the strength." Hearing this, Qin Xian smiled, walked over and patted him on the shoulder. "You are qualified to let me give you strength." Shen Menju took one look at the city and walked in without hesitation. There were no surprises. Although his black robe was very eye-catching, the soldiers did not ask too much. They just looked at him and let him in. Hearing this, Shuexian fell into deep thought. After a while, he looked at Qin Xian and replied respectfully. And with good luck, the magic circle teleported him to a place with very strong demonic energy, which is where he is now. In the city, a loud noise reached my ears, and there were hawking sounds everywhere on both sides of the street. A place full of demonic energy and exuding a cold atmosphere. Seeing this scene, Bloodthirsty cupped his hands, and then retreated. Hearing the noisy words in his ears, Shen Menju frowned, but he didn't say anything. He just glanced around. By coincidence, a man with a sinister appearance walked up to him. I saw countless black demonic energy gathering around him. The demonic energy kept swimming around like a small snake, and then slowly rushed into the man's body. Looking at the thing in his hand, Qin Xian handed it to the bloodthirsty man and said, "Little brother, you must have just come to Jade City, right?" The next moment, the demonic energy around the man suddenly began to surge, spreading like the Yangtze River. I saw the large characters written on it, and the frame was surrounded by black gold patterns, which was enough to show the preciousness of this object. Qin Xian glanced at him and nodded. Without saying anything more, a token appeared in his hand. A man in black clothes with a cold expression sat cross-legged here. Take a look, there are all rank 5 law weapons and rank 5 elixirs. After all, in a strange place like the Ten Realms, he still had to be careful. Even so, Shen Menju actually had a place in mind, and that was what the mysterious strong man who taught him power in the cave said. Magic Palace. Everyone, please come and take a look. The beauties imported from the realm of life and death have very plump breasts, enough for you to play with for a while at night. An extremely powerful aura erupted from the man's body, and the turbulent air waves dispersed thousands of miles of grey fog. And Bloodthirsty also recognized this token. It was the exclusive token of the deputy master of the Shadow Palace. Shen Menju glanced at him and nodded expressionlessly. Since you want to become the master of the Shadow Palace, I will give you this token. I hope you will not disappoint me. Tianluo Domain. His name is Shen Menju, the same Shen Menju from Profound Heaven Continent. A month ago, his strength had reached the peak of Profound Heaven Continent, but he still could not ascend to the upper world. In order to find out the reason, he set foot on all the hidden places on the Profound Heaven Continent. So now he has to find someone to ask. By the way, do you plan to develop with the Soul Palace or the Shadow Palace now? Boom. Qin Xian seemed to have remembered something, so he changed the subject and asked. I finally made a breakthrough. After being in the 10 realms for so long, I have the strength to protect myself, enough to go out and make a living. In this way, the magic circle was activated by him, and Shen Menju came to the 10 domains as he wished. Finally, they came to an ancient ruins, and found an old teleportation array in the ruins. In order to find out, Shen Menju poured all his spiritual energy into it. Thank you, Master. Then Shen Menjiu took out a black robe that covered her whole body, restrained her breath, and walked out. Seeing that he had broken through to the celestial immortal realm, the man's cold face finally showed a smile, and then he stood up and looked around. Half an hour later, Shen Menju came to a dilapidated city. Although the city was dilapidated, there were still a few soldiers guarding the gate. However, they looked relatively lazy. They mostly glanced at them and did not come forward at all. After inspection, they were released into the city. I think I'd better follow Shadow Palace. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 305. The man didn't pay attention to this and continued, Little brother, I will give you a free introduction when I first come here. There are two major forces in Yuchen competing for hegemony. They are called the Seven Kills Hall and the Ghost Sect. Hearing the power the man mentioned, Shen Menjiu raised her eyebrows, and her face hidden under the black robe showed an interesting look. She looked at the man and asked, Then do you know where the power of the Demon Palace is? What? The Demon Palace. Hearing these two words, the man was suddenly startled, his eyes revealed horror, and he said with some fear. Little brother, don't scare me. The Demon Palace is a force on the side of the demon realm. It is not comparable to our two forces in Yuchen. The Demon Palace can easily kill these two if it randomly sends a strong person. Power. Oh, Shen Menju showed a hint of surprise, as if he didn't expect that the Demon Palace he was looking for was so powerful. She couldn't help but feel a hint of gratitude to the guy who gave her strength. Then Shen Menju looked at the man and continued to ask, Then do you know where the demon realm is? The man insisted on asking this force what he saw. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva and asked tentatively, Little brother, are you kidding me? Is it possible that you really want to sin against the demon realm? Shen Menjiu nodded expressionlessly, and found that this person seemed to have a bad sense of the demon realm, so he asked curiously. What? Is the demon palace a bad force? The man looked like he was looking at a fool and nodded heavily. Of course it is bad. The demon palace is the place controlled by demon race, and demon race is also a mortal enemy of our human race. Brother, if you go there, that's a narrow escape from death, the kind that you'll never come back from. Although there are a lot of resources there, it is inevitable that once it is discovered that you are a human being, the demonic palace will send top strong men to hunt you down, or you will be surrounded by many demonic cultivator strong men. So under normal circumstances, people who are not desperate will not go there. Even if they go, they will go to a place like the realm of life and death. This place is not bad compared to the demon realm. Hearing this, Shen Menjiu nodded, her heart yearning for this force even more. After all, she could be considered a member of the demon palace. He didn't take what the man just said into consideration, but asked him where the demon realm was and walked towards it. Seeing Shen Menjiu's leaving figure, the man shook his head, showed a look of sympathy, and sighed, another person looking for death, alas. At the edge of the Tianluo domain, Shen Menjiu's figure appeared here, a pair of eyes looking at the endless abyss at his feet. But he didn't have any fear, instead there was a hint of heat in his eyes, and then Shen Menjiu turned into a magic light, revealing his true body. Bang 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 bang. Even if this is spread to the history of the 10 realms, it is still a very shocking thing. However, Shen Menjiu was also very brave, so she took off her own wings, turned them into 2 bone knives, and started fighting these demonic figures without fear. He saw a woman wearing a hat and black clothes looking at him with a curious expression. The strength exuded among them varies greatly, but it can also threaten Shen Menjiu's character. Ho ho ho. 3 days later, Shen Menjiu arrived at a huge city. At this moment, whirring sounds emerged from the abyss, followed by several low roars. I saw densely packed demonic figures emerging from the abyss, opening their bloody mouths, revealing their scarlet eyes, and rushed towards Shen Menjiu, as if they were starving to death. Judging from his appearance, it seemed that he wanted to surround Shen Menjiu, as if he wanted to surround and kill him. There was a sound of breaking through the air wherever it struck, although it barely managed to kill the big black bird nearby. No wonder there are so many demon race people here. Seeing this scene, Shen Menjiu's expression was suddenly startled, and she clenched the bone knife in her hand, and then she exuded monstrous magic power. Seeing this scene, Shen Menjiu frowned, crossed his arms, looked at the woman and asked coldly, I wonder if this girl knows me? Or did I offend you somewhere? Why do you keep looking at me like this? Boom. 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 I saw the word Devil City written in blood red on the city sign. But unfortunately at this time, another strange cry came from the abyss. The sound was very harsh and caused Shen Menjiu's eardrums to hurt slightly. But unfortunately, as he fought for too long, more and more things from the abyss flew out. One after another, the demonic figures were instantly destroyed by Shen Menjiu. Although one group was blocked, the next group was coming. Gradually, Shen Menjiu's brows began to frown. Knowing that he could not drag it any further, he used his own magic power to move towards the other side. The domain boundary rushed over. The next moment, he saw black shadows appearing in front of him one after another. These were large black birds with long wings and sharp beaks. Seeing this scene, Shen Menjiu did not hesitate and directly released his life force, forcibly fighting a way out, and finally exhausted all his mana and reached the other side of the realm. Then Shen Menjiu walked into the city gate and looked around, but found that someone seemed to be watching her. Based on the feeling in her heart, Shen Menjiu turned her head and looked to the other side. Seeing this situation, Shen Menjiu gritted his teeth. Although he was a little helpless, he could only use the bone knife to fight with them again. After half a stick of incense, the big black bird seemed to be afraid of something. It stopped 1 meter away from Shen Menjiu and then gave up the chase. Whoosh! With his huge body, scarlet eyes, and 3 pairs of 100-meter wings, he looked like a demon king at this moment. Shen Menjiu held the bone knife in his hand and kept slashing down horizontally. With a series of collisions, all the big blackbirds standing in the front were reduced to ashes. Despite this, there were still a steady stream of big blackbirds flying out of the abyss. Immediately, Shen Menjiu unfolded his 6 wings, soared into the sky, and headed towards the other side without fear. Then he gave Shen Menjiu a cold look, and all the big blackbirds flew back. The magic power continued to burn like a fireball. In an instant, Shen Menjiu gathered all the magic energy into black fireballs one after another, and threw them at all the big blackbirds without hesitation. And they all exude the power of the celestial immortal realm. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Shen Menjiu's lips, and he felt a little relieved in his heart. He found that the demonic energy here was very strong, even stronger than the place he stayed before. It looked like a demon-race sacred land. Bah! But those big blackbirds also followed, seemingly unwilling to do so. Seeing this, Shen Menjiu killed the 2 big blackbirds that approached, and then ran as fast as he could towards a mountain peak not far away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 306. The woman was startled when she heard this, but a seductive smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She opened her red lips slightly and said, "I don't know you, I just feel a familiar breath on you." Oh! Hearing this, Shen Menjiu raised his eyebrows and said, "I don't know you, how could you detect a familiar aura on my body?" From the demon realm to the demon realm, Shen Menjiu has never had any contact with anyone, except for the man with the sinister eyebrows and sly eyes, but that man doesn't look like a hidden senior. It's true that I've never seen you before, but don't you want to know where the familiar scent on your body comes from? The woman covered her mouth and smiled. Hearing this, Shen Menjiu frowned, feeling that this person was a little strange. "Can you tell me about it?" The woman nodded, turned around, exposed her white neck, looked at him and said, "Just follow me if you believe me. I believe the result will surprise you." Hearing this, Shen Menjiu nodded suspiciously and followed, not afraid that this was the woman's conspiracy. After a cup of tea, Shen Menjiu followed the woman to the outside of a black hut. The place exuded an extremely cold atmosphere, which made Shen Menjiu feel uncomfortable. He couldn't help but stop. Although he was not afraid, it didn't mean he was going to die. Sensing Shen Menjiu's stopped movement, the woman turned to look at him again, curling her lips and jokingly said, "What? Don't you dare to follow me?" Shen Menjiu shook her head and replied coldly, "It's not that you don't dare, I'm just curious why you didn't tell me directly here? Why did you take me in instead? Is it possible that you have some conspiracy?" Hearing this, the woman smiled, looked at the house in front of her with her beautiful eyes, and said, "If you believe it, follow me." Then, without waiting for Shen Menjiu's reply, the woman took a step forward. Seeing this scene, Shen Menjiu felt helpless. After thinking for a while, she decided to follow him and take a look. Inside the house, the scene was extremely dark, and there was a musty smell in the air. This situation made Shen Menjiu frown. Although he was a demon cultivator, it did not mean that he liked this kind of darkness. But the woman didn't care about it. With a wave of her hand, the surging black mana removed all the dust on the table, and a simple book came into view. "Didn't you tell me to explain the aura on my body? What's going on with this book?" Seeing this scene, Shen Menjiu felt puzzled and asked doubtfully. But the woman did not reply, but picked up the book. In an instant, the book emitted a dark light, and the light illuminated the entire room. The next moment, the 2 figures disappeared into your house, as if they had never appeared before. In a void space, two figures appeared here, and in front of them stood an old man wrapped in a black robe. Seeing the unfamiliar scene nearby, Shen Menju was suddenly startled. She looked at the two of them warily and asked, "What is going on? Where is this?" The woman did not reply, but raised her hands respectfully to the old man in front of her and said, "Mo Lao." Hearing this, the old man nodded, helped her up, then looked at Shen Menjiu and said, "Little brother, do you have a master?" Hearing this, Shen Menju looked startled. She didn't understand the meaning of the sentence, but she still replied, "I don't know if that counts, but at least he passed on the skills and power to me." The old man looked at Shen Menju with a look of understanding, and then sighed, "Sure enough, it's really him. I've been looking for him for thousands of years. Is it possible that you know that guy?" The old man glanced at him, nodded, and said with a smile, "Of course I recognize you, and you can be considered my junior brother, and I am the disciple he took tens of thousands of years ago." "What?" Shen Menjiu's pupils shrank. "For no reason, I actually have an extra senior brother?" Seeing Shen Menjiu's expression, the old man smiled and said, "I turned out to be his disciple. From now on, I will be your senior brother. As for the woman next to you, she will be your future life mentor, and it will lead you to the path of the strong." "The path of the strong?" Hearing this, Shen Menju fell into deep thought and said nothing. But the old man seemed to have no intention of continuing to speak. Then, the void nearby began to collapse, the old man's figure became flickering and disappeared from sight, and the two of them returned to the cabin again. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar scenes nearby, Shen Menju looked at the woman aside with confusion and asked, "Is everything true just now?" The woman nodded and replied, "Of course it is true. The senior brother you just met is one of the three elders of the Demon Palace, and his own strength has reached the level of the Immortal Emperor." "Immortal Emperor?" Shen Menju looked a little dazed. To put it this way, it was equivalent to having a powerful Immortal Emperor as his background. In my heart, I sincerely thank the guy who taught me the power again. Then he looked at the woman and asked, "What's your name? How should I call you?" The woman blinked at him, showed a charming smile, and replied, "My name is Yu Are You. From now on, you can call me Sister Yu or Senior Sister Yu. In fact, logically speaking, I am indeed your senior sister. Then I wonder what level your strength has reached, senior sister." Hearing this, Yu pursed her lips and smiled, "My strength is Immortal King 7th layer. Although it is a little lower, it is enough to teach you." Seeing this, Shen Menjiu nodded and said nothing more. At the same time, the immortal domain is sealed. One after another, purple-robed figures continued to appear in the valleys, mountain peaks, or major cities. Without exception, their strength has reached the Earth Immortal level or above, and countless forces have been destroyed among them. These purple-robed figures are the powerful men of the Soul Palace. On top of a huge mountain, the figure of the Soul Demon appeared here, looking at the glorious sect below. "It will be this force's turn soon. But I need your help, Master." As the words fell, Qin Feng's figure suddenly appeared next to Soul Demon. Looking at the glorious sect at his feet, Qin Feng nodded, waved his hand indifferently, and said coldly, "It's just a small matter, we can solve it immediately now." This sect is none other than Su Qing's mysterious Nether sect. At this time, Su Qing was practicing in his cave mansion, unaware that a catastrophe that would wipe out the sect was about to come. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 307. A few hours later, inside a mountain peak in the mysterious Nether sect, two Daoist figures were playing chess in a pavilion. Both sides had to go back and forth, until one of them seemed to have received some news, and his face that was originally full of smiles suddenly turned cold. A trace of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. The moment the former was playing chess, the latter crushed the chess pieces instantly and punched the former in the chest without hesitation. Ah! The former's eyes showed an unexpected and incredible look. But what was waiting for him was the latter's indifference. He saw the latter holding a sharp blade and swung it down. Puff! The former's head rolled down instantly, and he died with his eyes open. Blood instantly gushes out like water. The same situation is happening in other places, on the mountain peak of mysterious Nether Sect, where the disciples live. One after another, people swung their sharp blades at their own people. Although some people saw it and wanted to run away, they couldn't. In the sect at this moment, countless figures in purple robes appeared, shuttled among the peaks one after another, or in the square. Once they found someone passing by, they would wave the butcher knife in their hands. Some of them resisted, but unfortunately the effect was minimal. Bang bang bang. One roar after another resounded throughout the mysterious Nether Sect. At this time, in the sect master's hall, Shenling was fighting fiercely with several elder peak masters. The glorious hall has turned into a mess, with remnants of fighting everywhere. Elder Wu, Elder Qi, what do you mean? You dare to attack me? Do you know what you are doing? Shenling looked at the figures of several elders opposite, veins appeared on his forehead, and he scolded angrily. But everyone snorted coldly and did not speak. But they also knew that they couldn't beat Shenling, so everything they did just now was just to delay time. After a few breaths, a roar echoed outside the hall. The next moment, I saw a black magic dragon crashing directly into the main hall, smashing through 3 giant pillars, and then it was settled. At this time, the main hall began to shake without the support of the pillars. Seeing this, Shenling's eyes moved, knowing that it was about to collapse, he immediately disappeared and appeared in the mid-air of the hall. Boom! The main hall behind him finally collapsed and turned into ruins. At this time, Shenling had also discovered that dozens of Daoist figures were staring at him outside. The killing intent emanating from it made Shenling's heart tremble. Even so, Shenling was not afraid. Because the highest strength among these people is only in the true immortal realm. And he is a strong person in the second layer of the immortal sovereign realm. Killing these people is no different from trampling on an ant. With a sneer, Shenling waved his hand. The large sword blade rushed towards everyone in an instant, and the sound was extremely sharp, causing severe pain in everyone's eardrums. But everyone was not afraid, but tried their best to resist. Unfortunately, how could their strength be able to block the moves of Immortal Sovereign? Boom! One person was instantly blown to pieces by the sword, and blood was spread on everyone's faces, which made people look a little scary. Seeing this scene, everyone finally showed a hint of fear, and some people already wanted to escape. This is normal, after all, they are not from the Soul Palace. They just surrendered to the Soul Palace, and they didn't have the fearlessness of the Soul Palace at all. Unfortunately, will Shenling give them a chance to escape? Swish swish swish. Shenling waved his hand, and a large number of sword energy shadows tightly surrounded everyone, and then attacked them. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Seeing this situation, everyone swallowed their saliva and quickly used their magic power to turn into a shield to resist. But can it really be blocked? Boom! 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 The shield formed by everyone was shattered instantly, and everyone close to him died. After the sword energy shadow killed the person in front of it, it did not stop, but rushed towards the person behind again. Everyone's eyes showed a trace of despair. It was easy to deal with Su Qing, who was only in the Immortal King realm. His expression suddenly darkened, but he was not afraid because the strength of these people did not threaten him. I wonder if Senior still recognizes me. Profound Heaven Sect. Seeing this scene, Su Qing suddenly felt stressed. The decline in realm made Shenling feel a death crisis. All the sword energy phantoms turned into powder, and then in spite of Shenling's surprised eyes. Su Qing looked at the scene outside and exclaimed. Su Qing, who was in Cave Mansion, also felt the noise outside and walked out with a puzzled look on his face. His heart turned pale with shock, and he came to his senses. Before he could say anything, Qin Feng gathered his magic power and hit him. Feeling the decline in his strength, Su Qing's pupils shrank. After all, he now possesses the strength of the immortal sovereign realm. Then you should also know the word revenge, right? Qin Feng clenched his fist and roared. But at the moment when everyone was about to be hit, Qin Feng's figure appeared directly in front of everyone. Su Qing was already frightened and overwhelmed, and nodded tremblingly, "Remember, remember." Boom! Qin Feng condensed a red fireball in his hand and threw it towards Shenling without hesitation. Then, Qin Feng slowly walked towards him, with a hint of sneer and contempt in his eyes, and said. Shenling's realm instantly changed from the immortal sovereign realm to the immortal king realm. What's going on? The figures of Qin Feng and Soul Demon also appeared in mid-air, looking down at him with lofty expressions, like gods. Qin Feng gave him a cold look and smiled disdainfully. He was rolling on the ground in agony, with a very painful facial expression. Ah! With a bang, a bloody hole was suddenly punched in Su Qing's chest, and he collapsed to the ground dying. After all, this is so strange. My sect has not provoked any big forces, so why would it attract attacks from other forces? There was fear in his eyes, but also a hint of disbelief. Before he could find anyone to ask, hundreds of purple-robed figures appeared around him, staring at him coldly. As a result, he saw a scene that shocked him. Instead, he half squinted his eyes, seeming to be thinking about something. Unfortunately, these had no effect. Within a few breaths, Shenling disappeared into smoke and turned into dust on the ground. Qin Feng was too lazy to guess what Su Qing was thinking and directly used the destruction domain to lower his cultivation level to the immortal king realm. As for that fireball, he wanted to resist it with all his strength, but with his current strength, how could he resist it? The fireball instantly invaded Shenling's body, and the raging flames burned his soul fiercely. Shenling screamed. And at the moment when it was lost, its own destruction field was directly released. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 308. Su Qing nodded and swallowed. He was getting more and more panicked. At that moment, he seemed to see the Lord of Hell waving to him. Qin Feng didn't seem to be in a hurry to kill him, but looked at Su Qing with a smile and said lightly. Since Senior remembers it, you know that if you want to eliminate a force and fail to succeed, you have to pay a price, so I will not torture you and give you a happy death. Before Su Qing could say anything, Qin Feng's expression changed instantly and he broke his neck with his hands without hesitation. Finally, he disappeared here without looking back. Now, the entire mysterious Nether sect is completely in the hands of the Soul Palace, and his help is no longer needed here. 3 months later. Inside the main hall of Profound Heaven Sect. Dozens of figures stood respectfully on both sides. And at the highest point of the hall, a man with a handsome appearance and deep eyes wearing Juyu Emperor's robe sat there. He was Qin Xian. And next to his left hand, there is a giant blue dragon hovering there. This is the Azure Dragon. On the right side, there is a white tiger lying there. At this moment, Qin Xian was like a real law enforcer, enigmatic and with an incomprehensible feeling about himself. Only Soul Demon and Shadow Demon stood up. He bowed his hands respectfully to Qin Xian. Then they told Qin Xian everything they had done in the past 3 months. After a while, Qin Xian nodded slightly and said nothing. Nowadays, some small forces have been controlled by the Second Palace, leaving only some more difficult forces that have not yet been resolved. But this is also due to strength. If you were strong enough, you would have been able to solve them all long ago. Afterwards, Qin Xian looked down at everyone and said in a deep voice, I have seen everything you have done in the past few months, but it is not enough. Before anyone could express their doubts, Qin Xian waved his hand. Rays of light appeared one after another, and in an instant, thousands of top treasures appeared in the hall. Seeing such a horrifying scene, everyone was dumbfounded and dumbfounded. Because the treasures in it are too rare. They are all useful to one's own cultivation, among which there are a lot of rank 3 and rank 4 immortal jade beads. Looking at everyone's expressions, Qin Xian's expression did not change. These are the cultivation treasures he bought from the system mall using all his system values. The purpose is to bring the overall high-level strength of Profound Heaven Sect to the same level. Only in this way can the speed of ruling and sealing immortal domains and flying immortal domains be faster. Although the system gave him 10 years, Qin Xian felt that there was no need to waste so much time and wanted to complete the task within 2 years. After a cup of tea, everyone selected their favorite treasures, and immediately turned to Qin Xian, leaned over and said, Thank you, Sect Master. Qin Xian waved his hands without changing his expression and said calmly, It's okay. You deserve this. You don't need to thank me. If you want to thank me, then just put in your best efforts and complete the tasks assigned to you as soon as possible. The famous people were shocked and nodded heavily, a trace of determination flashed in their eyes. If the sect leader is so kind to them and gives them such good cultivation resources, they will naturally repay it with all their strength. Then Qin Xian told everyone some important things and waved to them, indicating that they could leave. Seeing this scene, everyone retreated and returned to the mountain peak where they lived. Juking Peak. A large group of palaces stands here, guarding a central hall. In the main hall, Fang Gu's figure appeared here, surrounded by streams of immortal energy. At this time, he was practicing with the treasure Qin Xian gave him. Fang Gu closed his eyes tightly, and a large amount of immortal energy flowed into him like a waterfall. The surging momentum caused a tremor nearby. His strength continued to improve, and with a click, as if something was broken, his strength reached the golden immortal realm 3rd layer. Fang Gu breathed out a breath, stopped practicing, with joy on his face, and clenched his fist. As the former emperor of the Golden Immortal Dynasty, Fang Gu always wants to take revenge for the past. Although he had his own reasons for what happened back then, if it weren't for his arrogant personality, those things might not have happened. Even so, Fang Gu couldn't let that group of people go. Because now, he is standing on his own standpoint, not on the standpoint of the public. After all, people themselves are selfish. Now his strength has been upgraded to the Golden Immortal Realm. Although it is not as good as before, he still has the strength to deal with his enemies. Thinking of this, Fang Gu sat up from the ground, looked out of the hall, and murmured to himself. Haixuanman, so many years have passed. Do you still remember me, Fang Gu? Do you still remember that you killed all the members of my Zijin dynasty clan? Fang Gu's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and the anger in his heart instantly escaped into his mind, but he still suppressed it. Because now he alone cannot deal with Haixuanman, at least he has to reach Saint Realm. But if this is the case, it may take decades or even hundreds of years. This still accounts for the fact that he is son of fortune. If not, it might take thousands of years. Because he is very familiar with the current situation in the 10 domains, and it is difficult to survive without the background of a big force. Fang Gu is also glad that he joined the Profound Heaven Sect, otherwise his strength may only be around the Celestial Immortal Realm. Although I can't deal with Haixuan Sect, it doesn't mean that I can't deal with Profound Heaven Sect. You know, his current identity is one of the masters of the 16 peaks of the Profound Heaven section. Although his authority is not great, he still has a few friends. For example, Wu Su, Xiaoran and others. Then a light suddenly appeared from the token on Fang Gu's waist, and a voice came from it. Master Fang, we are about to deal with a force, and this force is related to you. After hearing this, Fang Gu came back to his senses and replied with a solemn expression. Wait for me, I'll be here soon. As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Gu's figure disappeared from the spot. Fang Gu will never be absent from the forces related to him. Mingzhou, high in the sky. On top of a vast immortal boat, the figures of the 8 peak masters of the profound heaven sect, Shadow Demon, and others appeared here. Judging from everyone's expressions, they seemed to be thinking about something, and no one spoke to each other. It wasn't until a moment later that Fang Gu arrived. When everyone saw this, they raised their eyes and looked over. The people here all know the identities of Fang Gu and Gong Mo in their previous lives, and they often hear Fang Gu mention this Haichuan sect. Xiao Ran, who was wearing a fire cloud robe, saw Fang Gu's figure and his eyes moved slightly. Now he understands Fang Gu's mood very well. It's the same as when he wanted to destroy Tiangong with his own hands. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 309. Thinking of this, Xiao Ran came over, patted Fang Gu on the shoulder, and asked. Master Fang, I wonder what you think of this Haixian sect? Or is there a way to solve it? Xiao Ran secretly sent people to investigate before. Haichuanmen is a place with strong Saint Realm people, but it is not clear which stage of Saint Realm it is located. Hearing this, Fang Gu glanced at Xiao Ran and moved the corners of his mouth slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't say it. Instead, he sat next to everyone, shook his head and said, I don't have any opinion. After all, I don't know how long it has been since my death. I don't know if this Haichuanman has given birth to a new strong man, but if nothing else happens, Mongshan's strength must have reached Saint Realm peak. Hearing this, everyone's pupils shrank and they frowned again. The strong men at the peak of Saint Realm were a bit troublesome for them. Saint Realm is divided into 2 realms, namely Saint, Ancient Saint. The realms of the 2 are divided into 4 small realms, early stage, middle stage, late stage, and peak. And just now Fang Gu said that this person's strength has reached the peak of the Bible, which means that he is in the rank 2 of the Saint Realm, the peak of the Ancient Saint, and is only 1 step away from reaching the realm of the Immortal Emperor. This kind of strong man is not something they can deal with, unless Qin Xian comes in person. But if Qin Xian comes, what else will they do? Everyone has no choice but to deal with this force, because all the other forces, large and small, in Fey Immortal Domain have almost been solved. There are still some forces that they can't deal with, because these forces are related to the human race temple or the 7 Kills Palace and other forces, so no one dares to take action easily. Unless Qin Xian personally issued an order to deal with them. Among all the forces, only Haichuanmen is easier to solve, because this force has no background, and even if it does, it only has a small relationship with other forces. As long as Haichuanmen is solved, they will have achieved the mission requirements mentioned by Qin Xian. I believe that those forces will not come to rescue because this force is attacked, but will be happy to do so. After all, those guys have long been thinking about Haichuanmen, but it is just because they are righteous forces that it is difficult to take action. Qin Feng, who was standing silently aside, paused slightly when he heard what Fang Gu said just now. His strength is only at the Immortal King level, and he cannot defeat Mongshan, who has the peak strength of the Ancient Saint. Although Qin Xian recently gave them an 8 demon formation, which can deal with the Saint in rank 1 of Saint Realm. But the strongest person in this force is the Ancient Sage, and the 8 demon arrays will not have much effect on the powerful Ancient Sage. Therefore, it is relatively troublesome to deal with this force. Han Chuang glanced at Mo Chen and seemed to have guessed something, but he did not blame Mo Chen. Moreover, the strength of those forces is no worse than Haichuanmen, and is even much stronger. To be honest, although the strength of these people is low, they are too young. Almost no one is over 1,000 years old. Hearing this, Mo Chen stopped and nodded, and had no choice but to do so. In fact, Han Chuang didn't want to bring her here, but he couldn't resist Su Minjiao and had no choice but to let her follow. Hearing this, Qin Fen nodded. He naturally understood this, but there was nothing he could do now. The Haixuan sect was just one step away from completing the mission. The background of other forces was too strong, so it was not easy to solve, and it was a bit tricky. Qin Feng couldn't help but fell into deep thought. After a while, his dark eyes lit up and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, as if he had thought of something. Han Chuang frowned, looked at Mo Chen and asked. Brother Mo means that there is a strong man at the peak of Saint Realm in this Haixuan sect. Yes. The only task left for us by the sect master is Haixuanman. As long as we solve this Haixuanman, the task will be almost completed. Qin Feng turned his back to him, nodded and said. Mo Chen nodded expressionlessly and sighed. Master, Mo Chen cupped his hands. You should know why I asked you to bring Han Chuang here, right? Although Su Minjiao's strength is only that of the ancient saint late stage, it does not matter. After all, Qin Feng himself has the field of destruction. When the two fight, Qin Feng can directly use the field of destruction to reduce the guy's strength to a big stage. Mo Chen also walked out at this time, came to Han Chuang's side, and told Han Chuang everything about the situation they encountered this time. When the time comes, victory will definitely belong to Su Minjiao. She couldn't even arouse the slightest interest. If we find out that we are taking advantage of him, the consequences are not something we can afford. Are you sure you can convince Su Minjiao about this? Mo Chen's eyes moved and he nodded slightly. I know. Because Su Minjiao must protect Han Chuang in this life and not let him be in any danger. Qin Feng's purpose in calling Mo Chen was to let him call Han Chuang. Once Han Chuang came, Su Minjiao would definitely follow. After a cup of tea, Mo Chen's figure appeared here, followed by Han Chuang and Su Minjiao. Qin Feng's guess was indeed correct. Wherever Han Chuang goes, Su Minjiao will follow, no matter where it is. Moreover, the cultivation of these people has reached the golden immortal realm, and even the highest ones have reached the immortal king level. Su Minjiao, who was standing behind Han Chuang, didn't know that someone needed her help. At this time, her beautiful eyes were looking at the people on the ferry boat, but she only glanced at them. After all, the strength of these people was beyond her. It seems that it is really too weak. Looking at the figures of several people, Qin Feng walked over with an indifferent expression and took Mo Chen to a hidden place. The reason why she came was because of Han Chuang. What Qin Feng needs is Su Minjiao's strength. Han Chuang didn't know the news at this time. He and Su Minjiao were listening carefully to what everyone said. Su Minjiao stood behind Han Chuang with an expressionless face, her beautiful eyes looking around from time to time. Mo Chen's expression showed a trace of hesitation. After thinking for a moment, he replied, Master, this matter must be agreed by Han Chuang. Besides, even if Han Chuang agrees, Su Minjiao may not agree. After all, as a person who has lived 3 lives, she can definitely guess what we are thinking. It would be incomparable to her in the previous 2 generations. Her ability to cultivate to such a level is all the result of her third world body. Let's give it a try first. If it doesn't work, let's talk about it later. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 310. He has been in Profound Heaven Sect for so long and has never done anything for the section. Now that Mo Chen brought it up this time, he really wanted to help. After all, I am also a part of Profound Heaven Sect. Thinking of this, Han Chuang turned to look at Su Minjiao, struggled slightly in his heart, and asked, Minjiao, can you do me a favor? Hearing this, a smile suddenly appeared on Su Minjiao's cold face. She looked at Han Chuang and nodded, "Brother Han, just say what you say. As long as Minjiao can do this, I will definitely help you." Seeing this, Han Chuang took a breath and told Su Minjiao everything that Mo Chen had just told him. After listening, Su Minjiao's beautiful eyes suddenly closed together and looked at the people of Profound Heaven Sect not far away, with a trace of anger flashing in her eyes. Isn't it obvious that he is taking advantage of himself and Han Chuang? Treat people like fools? Seeing this scene, Han Chuang seemed to have guessed what Su Minjiao was doing, and hurriedly pulled her body and said slowly, "Minjiao, don't be angry, they didn't force me to do this, but I agreed to it myself. After all, I am also considered a member of the Profound Heaven Sect, so I should help them in whatever way they can. But I don't have the strength, so I can only ask you for help." Han Chuang lowered his head and looked at Su Minjiao sincerely, "I have never begged you, even if Han Chuang." Before the begging words could be uttered, Su Minjiao covered his mouth, sighed, looked at Han Chuang and nodded. She didn't want Han Chuang to beg her, otherwise she would be sad. What's more, she owed Han Chuang 2 lifetimes of marriage, so she would help no matter what. Seeing Su Minjiao nodding in agreement, Han Chuang didn't notice that his mouth was covered by Su Minjiao, and a look of joy suddenly appeared on his face. Seeing Han Chuang's smiling face, Su Minjiao also smiled. Then, she looked at Mo Chen who was eavesdropping and asked, "When will we do it?" Hearing this, Mo Chen looked a little embarrassed, coughed slightly, and did not reply, but looked at Qin Feng aside. Seeing this, Qin Feng stood over, looked at Su Minjiao with a smile and said, "Miss Su can do it whenever she wants, I won't force you." Su Minjiao glanced at him when she heard this, but did not ask about the strength of this force. The next moment, her figure disappeared from the place. Everyone looked at each other and smiled, and quickly controlled the immortal boat to follow. "Who are you? Don't you know that this is the situation of our Haikuan sect? You dare to kill our disciples for no reason like this. Are you looking for death?" But several breaths passed, and he didn't wait for a sound. The man's heart trembled, and he seemed to have a premonition of something. He quickly touched the man's nose with his hand and found that there was no trace of breath left, but he was unwilling to give in and continued. "I used my magic power to check the man's breath, but the man didn't notice any movement of breath at all. Despite this, they still screamed in pain." Hearing this, Su Minjiao looked at her with a pair of beautiful eyes, curled her lips, and showed a charming smile. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. F&L #:. Outside Haikuanman. When the man saw it, he thought he was scaring him, so he walked up to him, patted his face with his hand, and said, "This." The man took a step back and suddenly realized that he had hit something. He swallowed and turned his head. There was a loud sound from the sword, and the next moment, there was only a roar, and a Yangtze River-like sword intent erupted instantly, flowing around Su Minjiao like a small snake. Then Su Minjiao moved her palm and injected her own magic power into the sword body. Ahh. Su Minjiao wiped the jade sword in her hand, and the aura emanating from her was as terrifying as a god of death. Then his eyes turned white and he just gave up. Afterwards, 2 immortal venerable men came out of Haikuan sect, and an old man with white hair and beard looked at the scene nearby, pointed at Su Minjiao, and angrily said. When the latter heard this, he smiled and said jokingly. Seeing this scene, everyone's pupils shrank, and their vigilant expressions instantly turned into fear. Before they could react and prepare to resist, the shadow of the sword had already pierced their chests or between their eyebrows. But he didn't even see anyone. He only felt that his vision went black, and his head separated and fell to the ground. Upon hearing these words, the former seemed to have been splashed with cold water. He came back to his senses instantly and sighed. Two strong men from the golden immortal realm in green robes stood on both sides, chatting and laughing with each other, not knowing that they were about to face death. Boom. Hey, you kid, don't pretend to be dead. Don't use these old-fashioned methods to deceive me. Am I that easy to deceive? The speed of the sword was so fast that it stung everyone's eardrums. You don't know, that woman, tisk tisk tisk, how pretty she looks. When the old man saw this scene, he was in a daze. When he came to his senses, he suddenly found that his eyes were black and his body had been cut in half by him. The former's face instantly showed a trace of envy and fascination, and his mouth watered. They thought an enemy was coming, so they immediately walked out with a vigilant look on their faces. However, before they could see who it was, thousands of sword shadows had already rushed towards their limbs without hesitation. And the immortal venerable strongman next to him did not avoid it. He couldn't use any moves and was killed instantly. The screams were like a melody, constantly echoing around, but Suminjaya just looked at the scene with cold eyes, without any emotion at all. Hey, did you hear that senior brother Wang next door found an extremely good-looking partner while he was traveling? Suminjaya, dressed in red, was seen standing behind, looking at the two corpses with cold eyes, with no trace of emotion on her face, as if she was killing ants instead of people. This is the strength of Saint Realm strong men, which cannot be compared to two immortal venerable strong men. What? Don't you still want to steal other people's partners? With our status, let alone stealing, even if we take a look, we will lose our heads. Just when he was about to say something, he suddenly felt that he couldn't breathe. His face turned red instantly, and he kept pinching his neck with his hands. It was very uncomfortable, and he collapsed to the ground within a few breaths. Some people were lucky and only got hit in the arm or one leg. Suminjaya gathered them all together and turned them into a stream of light, breaking the mountain gate of Haichuanmen. All the boulders were broken into pieces, and the turbulent concussion shocked all the disciples and elders in Haichuanmen.